Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kara Goodwin, and I'm the host of the Meditation Conversation podcast. And I'm so excited to talk to you today about this particular hurdle that I've had throughout my spiritual journey, which is something that we really favor in our human experience, in our physical 3D world. Our minds and our intellect is such an asset. So when we have a strong intellect, when we are able to kind of think through things carefully, follow directions well, and so forth, that can be a really huge asset for us in physicality, in the human experience. But when we're wanting to expand our consciousness more and experience ourselves as conscious beings, as more than human beings, that propensity that we may have to intellectualize things can actually make things a little bit harder for us. And I certainly have experienced this myself. I was always a really good student, a hard worker, and I followed directions easily. And so that served me really well all through school, through my corporate work. In many aspects of human existence, that served me really well. But when I started feeling this call to expand myself more and to be experiencing myself from a spiritual perspective, that actually became a little bit of a hindrance. It became a bit of an obstacle. And the reason for that is that from a spiritual perspective, we're so much more than our ability to think. We're more than the body, we're more than the thoughts. And we're also not linear. And our mental body, our propensity to think works in a very linear fashion. That's how we learn, that's how we're taught. We're kind of part of our conditioning, just the way that the world is structured, it works in a very linear way, and that makes our learning easier, um, in the physical realm to be able to process things in a linear way. But when we start working with expanded consciousness, if we're only using that linear perspective, that can make things really hard to understand and hard to experience. And so, the other thing that comes to mind, haha, that comes to mind with this is, um, as we go through our spiritual pursuits, we look to those who have had certain experiences or gotten to certain levels, let's say, within their spiritual development, who we want to emulate, or where we think, oh, they've had these types of experiences, or they've gained this sort of knowledge, or they're at this part of their path, and I want to be able to get to where they are too. And so we may look to people to say, well, what did they do? I'm going to follow their guidance. And what's happening on the other side is that those people who have maybe developed a certain skill, let's say like mediumship, and they can just tap into that kind of naturally, but they want to help other people to learn how to do it. And so they kind of reverse engineer what it is that they're doing, if that makes sense. So I've been watching, Tyler Henry, I think is his name, on Netflix. He's got this cool Netflix series I'm enjoying. I think it's called Life. Is it Life After Death? That sounds really easy. I think it is. I think it's called Life After Death. Anyway, it's Tyler Henry, I'm pretty sure is his name, and he's on Netflix, and this is a really great I'm really enjoying this series. And he's a young guy, and he just is a really talented medium. And it's interesting to watch him work because they show him doing all these sessions, and he's, like, using pen and paper, and he's just kind of making these lines. And as he's making these lines, all this information is coming through from the other side. And so for I don't know Tyler, obviously, but I watch this and I think, "Oh, it'd be easy to watch him do this and think, "Okay, if I wanna be like Tyler Henry and I wanna be able to talk to people on the other side, I just make these sketches," and they're not even sketches. He just, like, keeps making lines up and down, and then he crosses them, and he just keeps, like, making all these lines on the paper. And so from an intellectual perspective, we may look at that and say, "Okay, well, all I need to do is spend some time drawing these lines," because that's what he does, and then he opens himself up to some sort of, other dimension to make him be able to do that. So if I do that, then that's the result that I'm gonna get. But what I see happening with Tyler is that he's making those motions with his hand and with pen to paper, but it's like a creative outlet for him, and I can imagine that because I think he is an artist, that over time, he's just realized that when he works with kind of that creative style, it just kinda naturally opens up this channel within him. It helps his consciousness to shift into a place where he has access to the other side. And so by going through those motions, it's not like a lock and key where it's like, okay, step 1 for Tyler is to get out his pad of paper. Step 2 is to put pen to paper and start moving up and down, and then move side to side and then up and down and side to side. And then magically, because he's done that 3 times or however many times, it opens him up to the other side, and so that's how it should work for you. Intellectually, that is maybe how we would experience that or expect that to happen. But he if and if he were to give a class, maybe he would give those sorts of steps to help people because he's reverse engineering what he does. But there is this, um, it's like that's a way for him to get into that current because he's used creativity for so many years of his life, and it's kind of opened up that pool, that access within him, that portal. And so it may not be as simple as, okay, you just literally follow these steps that Tyler Henry does, and it's gonna have the same effect. And when we're really strong in our mental body, that can be really frustrating for us because we want step by step, predictable results. And it's not so black and white in my experience. There is so much spaciousness and room for individuality, for uniqueness. There are a lot of pathways that are to higher consciousness that are really designed for us individually. And it's not to say that something that works for someone that you're drawn to isn't gonna work for you. So it may very well be, oh, you're attracted to the work of Tyler Henry, um, and maybe he teaches classes, I don't know. And if you feel a really strong resonance with him and you do feel a really strong resonance with connecting with the other side, perhaps he will be the right match for you to say, "Okay, what works for me will work for you." Um, but it's also to say that we have these individual makeups within us, these unique aspects of who we are, and part of the discovery is feeling into where we're led and what opens things up for us. And a lot of times creativity is a pathway that we find that. But it's not so like step 1 is this, step 2 is that. It is get releasing the dictates, releasing the steps, releasing the need to be pedantic about how to connect with ourselves and letting ourselves be in a state of flow and acceptance in a very natural way. So, nature helps with this, being out in nature without a formula, but noticing nature around you, letting it come in, letting yourself relax and allowing nature to come into your energy field. So doing that through your senses, doing that through your presence, your ability to just be without feeling like, okay, step 1 is this, step 2 is that, without intellectualizing it, without trying to do it right, but really feeling into it intuitively and having that freedom within you to play and explore and just letting it be. The same thing with dance. I think dance is another way to be in flow where you don't have to be a dancer, you don't have to know the moves, you don't have to follow a formula, but you can just turn music on and let your body move and feel yourself go into a flow where your body is responding to the music without you really thinking about it, without you thinking about what you look like, thinking about what the next step is gonna be, thinking about whether you're keeping the beat, but really letting your body respond to the music in a very organic way. Same thing with drawing or painting or doodling or whatever. It's utilizing the creativity not for the output, not to draw a pretty picture, not to have something that you're going to frame or show other people, but for the process itself, for the movement, for being in the flow, for being able to tune into which direction does the paintbrush wanna go or the pencil wanna go? What feels right? Does it look like we need squiggles in the upper right-hand corner or whatever it might be? But feeling what wants to happen, knowing there's no right or wrong, and not feeling like there's any judgment, there's any expectation, there's any process that goes with it. So those types of creative endeavors, as well as being in nature, can really help you to bypass the mental mind because that can be such a hurdle. So I am a recovering overthinker and with a very, I typically have a very strong mental propensity. So I hope that my experiences can help you if you find yourself with a similar kind of makeup as me. And I'm wishing you all the very, very best. Thank you so much for watching this, and I will see you next time.